Hello, please let me see your ticket stubs for the Double-Edged Double Bill, where you get 2 film and or media discussions for the price of 1, which is nothing. Each week, Adam Thomas and Thomas Mariani will come to the table to randomly select the yin and yang of a double feature. One will have 2 good movies, the other 2 bad ones. Both will have to pick a number between 1 and 10 in order to seal their fates for each episode. Let the chaos begin. I am Thomas Mariani.
And I am Adam Thomas.
And Adam, it's our 2nd episode. They said it wouldn't last.
We beat the odds, man.
We really did. Everyone was counting us out.
Through love, all is possible.
Indeed. The true spirit of the podcast is friendship.
Yep.
But for those of you who might be new, basically for each episode we have 2 films, one of which will be a good movie, one of which will be a bad movie. And keep in mind, this is from just our general perspectives. Generally, we want to try and go either from our perspective or what a movie's sort of reputation is, and sometimes we might be surprised by how it goes.
Yeah, definitely. I guarantee there's going to be at least one time where one of us picks a bad movie that the other one likes. It's going to happen.
And vice versa, with a good movie that the other person doesn't like.
Exactly.
It'll be very interesting to see. And each week we have a topic from which our 2 different films will come from, and the topic for this week, in honor of, we got Deadpool 2 coming up, but we just did Marvel movies, so we decided to go with action comedies, the one of the more lucrative and common subgenres out there.
Mm-hmm. You don't realize it either, when you think about it. You think action movies, and then there's comedy movies, but yeah, you're 100% right. It's huge, the action comedy genre.
Well, like, for example, we could have just done this exclusively on buddy cop movies. Like, that's a subgenre of the subgenre. It's the inception of genres. To the table, you this time have 2 good movies, and I have 2 bad ones.
Yes.
So I'll go ahead and pick first from your 2 movies, and I'll pick a number between 1 and 10 to randomly select which of the good we will do. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna do number 3.
Oh, at number 3, right on the button, is 2003's The Rundown with Dwayne Johnson and Seann William Scott.
And what was the other choice?
The other choice at number 7 was Beverly Hills Cop.
Okay. I've seen Beverly Hills Cop. I have not seen The Rundown, actually.
Oh, it's fun. It's just pure fun. It's a real fun movie. I mean, if you're not expecting the greatest movie ever, then, I think you'll enjoy it. Christopher Walken is the main bad guy. I just gotta say that.
I'm very excited. So, Adam, I've got 2 bad movies now.
Shit.
Is it bad?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you do got 2 bad ones. Okay. Thomas. I'm gonna go with number 4.
Okay. At number 2, I have a very interesting choice. I'm going with the lost gem from 1988, Miami Connection.
Yes.
And to be fair, very true. You almost would have, believe me, you wouldn't have won at number 7, which was Lethal Weapon 4.
Oh God, yeah. I prefer that one to Lethal Weapon 3, though. Believe it or not.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's got Rene Russo in it. That's enough to make it a bit better. But yeah, so Miami Connection, which is interesting, I picked because it isn't trying to be a comedy. It's trying to be an action movie.
But it is hilarious.
It is so hilarious, and I really cannot wait to talk about Miami Connection. I'm so excited to just rewatch that.
What the fuck?
So, Rundown and Miami Connection. It's going to be an interesting double feature, and we'll be right back with that.
One job, I wipe your slate clean. You walk out of this house a free man.
How much?
250 large.
No problem. He's come to the other side of the world.
Is that duct tape?
To finish one last job.
I'm looking for a man. His name's Travis Walker. Brown hair, face like a weasel.
Do I know you?
I'm taking you home, Travis.
What's in Los Angeles?
Your father.
So angry!
Shut up.
If only it were that simple. Apparently, he stumbled onto a trinket of some value in my jungle.
Yep. I want it back.
Wow.
And we have returned with having seen our double feature now of The Rundown and Miami Connection. Adam, are you ready? Are you pumped? Are you full of action and laughs?
Friends forever, friends for life.
It's friends for eternity, loyalty, honesty. But that's our second feature.
Hey, man. Whatever. You know what? Get off my ass.
Let's start off with our first feature, The Rundown, which came out September 25th, 2003. Directed by Peter Berg, who started out as an actor. I mean, in terms of his directorial stuff, you probably know him recently as the guy who makes those Mark Wahlberg movies that come out in, like, January or September that appeal to your dad.
Yeah, right. Did he do Battleship?
He did do Battleship, yes.
Oh, fuck.
He also did stuff like the Friday Night Lights movie and The Kingdom.
Yeah.
Very Bad Things. This is his second feature, and more importantly, this is the first real, at least like solo, not attached to a franchise kind of vehicle for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Which it's interesting because like when you brought this up as a double feature thing, we both kind of realized after we did that intro that like, oh, you know, really it kind of fits because now The Rock is one of the few movie stars still around.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And another important thing about this one, I think this is the first one where he went by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Because if I remember right, like the Scorpion King and stuff, it was just The Rock.
Right, and admittingly, now you can correct me if I'm wrong because you're the bigger wrestling guy, but this was right after
Sure.
he like stopped doing WWE or F, I think at the time. Was it F at the time?
At the time, it was WWF. Yeah, he stopped. He stopped, come back, stop, come back, that type of thing. But yeah, this is definitely one of the first times he went on his hiatus. I think he literally came back 2 or 3 more times after this.
Right, but it was the first time he stopped doing it all the time because he was obviously first known
correct.
as the Rock persona. Interestingly, I remember my dad told me once he would go to the gym a lot, to this one particular gym, and he would see Rocky Johnson, his father, work out with his little dweeby son. He was like, man, he's getting buff. I wonder what he's going to do.
He did all right for himself.
Yeah, he did. And I think that's the big thing that makes The Rundown really watchable is it's a really good vehicle for him, particularly... My thing is that this is the first time I'd seen The Rundown really in full.
Right.
I'd realized I'd actually seen clips and pieces from cable, because this was a very big cable, kind of like TNT mainstay for like the mid-2000s. But the big thing is the opening of this movie is such a great showcase for all of The Rock's talents.
Oh, yeah, in the club?
Yes.
Yeah, it's such a what a cool scene. That's why I actually, believe it or not, because I was very hesitant about this movie when it's coming out. Because just, you know, it's Seann William Scott being Seann William Scott, and then The Rock. I'm like, oh boy. But then after that scene, I'm like, all right, I can handle this movie. The Rock's going to do all right. And yeah, like you said, now look at him. He's the biggest action movie star in the world.
Yeah, and he's a part of one of the biggest franchises in the world now with the Fast and Furious movies. And even when a movie of his doesn't do that well, it still does pretty decent for itself. Like, even like Baywatch wasn't a huge hit, but it made enough to like stabilize itself pretty well. Like The Rock doesn't.
He got its budget back for sure.
Yes, which is interesting because this movie didn't even do that back in 2003. It was made for $85 million, only made about 81 when it came out. It was not one that really made a huge splash. And I can kind of see why, admittingly, because I don't love this movie, but right. I think it's for it being a cable mainstay that it is a great cable movie, which is a dying quality at this point, given, you know, cable isn't as popular as it used to be. But it is the perfect movie for you were out all night Saturday and you're pretty drunk still, you're hungover, and you're like, oh man, it's like 9 and I'm still up and I hate everything. Let me put something on. The Rundown's
right,
pretty
TBS Superstation it.
Yes, exactly.
That's right. Yeah, no, I can agree with that. Like, I really like this a lot more when I first saw it. It's definitely aged. But, I didn't even realize it's been 15 years since this movie was out. But I still got a soft spot for it. Just Christopher Walken being Christopher Walken is always good for me.
Though it's interesting, this feels a bit more like Chris Walken, not as much of a joke, because around this time, he's doing shit like Kangaroo Jack, where he's being a joke. He is doing the Chris Walken imitation, pretty much just as his performance. Versus here, this feels like it's a bit more intimidating. There are obviously, kind of Walken-y moments, like the Tooth Fairy thing, or...
I love that scene so much. Enough, she takes a tooth and leaves you a goddamn quarter.
Yeah, or honestly, I really love the scene where him and The Rock actually meet each other at the beginning of the movie, which I think is part of, the solid first 15 minutes or so of this movie that I think is honestly great, with, that club scene, and then they meet each other in Brazil, and I love their back and forth, because it shows that, Christopher Walken has been the king of this area in Brazil for so long, and I love the shot of his empire with, everybody digging. It creates such a great sense of scale, which is something that I think Peter Berg does pretty well. Even in lesser movies like a Hancock and stuff like that, he creates a really great sense of scale on a medium-level budget.
Yeah, I could agree with that, absolutely.
And the two of them really come off, back and forth. The whole thing about, I don't go into a person's house and take something out of their fridge without asking them for permission. Stuff like that. It shows that there's a respect, but it's also an intimidation game at the same time, playing off each other. Which leads great into, the bar scene, where that's an awesome action scene, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the guy with the razor whips for no reason.
Oh, God. But I like that element of it. It's definitely silly, but it's a fun sequence. Yeah. For sure. It almost makes you forget about stuff like Seann William Scott, I'm very hot or cold on. Usually, especially this era, it seems very clear that this almost seemed like a movie that was more action than comedy, and they got Stifler and they're like, oh, we gotta do American Pie stuff. Which
100%. Yeah, like I said, that's why I was kind of sour on him. It's Seann William Scott, hey, just be Stifler in every movie you're in. Yeah, and that's literally what it was. This and that other horrible action movie with Chow Yun-Fat. Oh, God. Oh, Bulletproof Monk.
Oh, God.
But yeah, he's just Stifler and everything. And in this, he's got a couple funny parts in this movie that didn't bother me too much. But for the most part, yeah, he was completely throwaway for me, which is odd because he's basically, the second main character.
Well, yeah, because they're very clearly trying to do Midnight Run, but in a then modern early 2000s action aesthetic. Which, that's an amazing movie, and still maybe the perfect action comedy movie. If you have never seen Midnight Run, Robert De Niro, Charles Grodin, what the fuck are you doing listening to this?
Yeah, no kidding. In fact, when we were doing this, that was one of because I always make 10 picks and then whittle it down to 2, and I always try to pick 2 that are a little bit more obscure. Yeah, that was on my list for sure. That was right up at number 1. No, number 2. Number 1 I had Beverly Hills Cop.
Yes, of course.
But regardless, anyways.
Yes, to get back to this, it's not so much Seann William Scott for me, because I think him and The Rock have a fine chemistry. I think it's serviceable. It works for the movie. But it's more just some of the stuff around them, the whole scene where the monkeys first attack and the monkey starts humping The Rock's face. I'm just this. We didn't want this to go, especially for that long. I don't know why we need. It's a comedic beat that never seems to end while you're watching.
Yeah, there was a lot of monkey fuck facing. There was a lot of it. Yeah, I agree. The real immature humor, that's the stuff that doesn't hold up at all on a repeat viewing. You got to figure, when I first saw this, I was just got 20 years old, and probably under a couple substances, and I thought it was hilarious. And watch it now, I'm like, okay, all right, I get it. The monkey's screwing his ear. That's great. Oh, 5 minutes later, he's still pile driving The Rock's ear. Fantastic. It's fine. There's a lot of groan-worthy moments for sure. But I mean, Kino's in it, so from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: The Secret of the Ooze.
Yes, Ernie Reyes Jr. pops up. He's the human guy who you're like, why is there a human guy following them around? Oh yeah, because he can kick ass.
Yeah, it's Kino, man. He's a badass.
Yes. But there's also a lot of interesting other people that are in here. Rosario Dawson, we haven't mentioned yet, doing a terrible Brazilian accent.
Horrible. horrible. I mean, this was early in her career still.
Yeah.
I don't understand why not just get someone with an accent?
This was around that weird time where she was trying to kind of branch out from just being sort of like the hot chick and doing other things. Like, this was not too long before, like, Alexander, where she's still, like, in a period piece, but they're exposing her naked anyway. Or Rinse. Yeah. Good God.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
But yeah, it's a shame because, I mean, I think she's a very talented actress, and she's, I think, unfortunately sort of got lost after that mid-2000s era. Now she's at least got, like, a steady paycheck with those Marvel TV shows. But at the same time, I always liked her natural charisma, and that's why I don't think this role quite works because of that accent. It feels like it's constraining her from her natural charm that I really like in other movies.
I agree a lot. But, I mean, you got to figure, though, like you already said, she was still a little bit of green. So, I mean, there was definitely the raw talent there, but it wasn't defined. But I think, as for what her character is, as sort of a quasi-love interest for Seann William Scott, and even for The Rock in a couple scenes, I think she does a fine enough job. She's a placeholder character. She's there for exposition. That's pretty much...
They're also clearly trying to make her kind of like a Marion Ravenwood, which I would love to see Rosario Dawson do, like a Marion Ravenwood style. I don't take shit. And I don't care about you idiots doing your thing. But, it's not the best written version of that part for her. Someone who I think is well cast, though, in the movie is Ewan Bremer, who you might recognize as Spud from Trainspotting, appears as the helicopter pilot guy, the plane pilot guy that comes in and gets The Rock into the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly love him in this movie.
I love him, too, man. Anything he's in, though, I'm a fan of his.
Yeah.
I love that guy.
Especially him coming in with the fucking bagpipes in that climax. It's such like a fun, spiriting, rousing moment. Or even just like how ramshackle his entire thing is. Like,
I know.
Like, is that
duct tape holding the wig on. And that dirty ass knee brace he's wearing all the time. Yeah, he was definitely a cool character. It's such an odd idea where he's obviously this very, very Scottish guy who's been through the shit, and for some reason he's piloting for illegal shit down in Brazil. Like,
World
it was
takes you places.
Yeah, I guess so, man. It was crazy. But yeah, what a cool entry! What a cool thing with him at the end, with his monologue and then the bagpipes with the balls running through. It was so cool. He's probably, now that I've seen it, in this state of my horrible existence, he's probably my favorite character in the movie now.
I can see that, but at the same time, I would say of the characters, The Rock is the most interesting and defined character to me, which I think makes him really the heart and soul of what makes this movie work as much as it does. And I do want to get back to that because I kind of like how they introduce small elements that, like, he wants to be a chef, he wants to get better at it, and you see that kind of motivation in him, and he's kind of nervous about it, which admittingly feels kind of like you're too afraid to, like, a girly thing like cooking, whatever. It feels kind of like it dates the movie. But at the same time, you can tell he has a passion for that, and he also just has a real likability. Like, to go back to that club scene, I love the fact that the entire time he doesn't want to do this. Like, he literally says it at a certain point, but even in his mannerisms, you can tell he's just like, look, I don't want to make this rough. I can make it rough, and I'm holding this back.
I agree. I love that when he's calling him, you think it's because they all got in his face and everything when he calls Billy to tell him, like, I don't want to go back in there. I don't want to go back in there. Look, they have a legitimate chance of repeating next year. I do not want to hurt them. He's afraid that he's going to go in and just take the shit, which he proceeds to do very, very well.
Right, but I think that's a key part. I think what makes Dwayne Johnson as big of a star as he is that as much as he is like a big action guy, he has way more of a vulnerability than I think a lot of modern action stars are able to portray. Like, Jason Statham, who is often opposite him, especially in, like, the last Fast and Furious movie, is, like, a fun sort of Charles Bronson sort of class of action hero. But there's not that vulnerability, and I think that's kind of why he's not nearly as popular as somebody like The Rock. Because The Rock can do not just the big action scenes, but he can be funny, he can have a bit of emotion stuff. Even in a movie as mediocre and Disney as The Game Plan, which was his family movie like a decade ago.
I can't believe I saw that. I don't think I saw that one.
No,
but
he makes that movie watchable because you can tell that this guy, despite how big he is, he has a real heart that you can get behind. And I think that's even on display here in this kind of grimy, sweaty, holy fuck, is this movie sweaty action movie. Like,
yeah, it is. Oh yeah, you feel like you stink after watching it. Like you're there with them. You got to take a shower a little bit. Everybody's just so filthy and nasty.
You feel like you've been on a hike with both these guys throughout the whole movie as they've been walking around the jungle endlessly. Which I think is a big credit to Peter Berg's direction. But also, I think this is the first movie to really key into that, because in like Scorpion King and The Mummy Returns, that character really wasn't that much of a character. Especially Mummy Returns, obviously. But even in the Scorpion King, it's like...
Yeah, he was barely even in The Mummy Returns. That's a goddamn stupid cartoon.
Yeah, and even Scorpion King, it's a second-rate Conan. Here, I think they get to really one of the heart of what makes, what later down the line, he would end up making work in, say, like a Jumanji or anything else like that, is there's a sincerity behind the big, sort of brutish guy. I think you can agree with me, that's a big part of what made some of those wrestlers turned actors become as popular as they are, like a Roddy Piper or Andre the Giant, any of those guys.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with that. Well, you got to figure, these guys constantly have to act, as a wrestler. That's constantly what they're doing. They're trying to get the crowd behind.
It's not real, Adam?
Well, it's real to you, buddy.
It is real to me.
But they got you son of a bitch. They got to constantly get, they are. That's what they do. They act. Now, it doesn't always translate well to movie form. I mean, like Hulk Hogan, that dude's terrible.
What Santa with muscles is a phenomenal cinematic achievement. And we're not
Suburban Commando, dude. Suburban Commando.
Well, that's like that's second, but Santa with muscles.
Second, right? You're right. My fault. Or Mr. Nanny. Well, that's third. The thing about The Rock is he's like you said, he's just got a charm to him, and it does help that he is a good-looking dude, and he's funny, and he's not afraid to take the piss out of himself. Like he'll make fun of himself. He can, downplay to somebody else. He's got chops. And like you said, you definitely see the foundation here as to what he would become now, because now he's not a former wrestler. The dude is just a movie star. Like like you said, Andre the Giant and Roddy Piper, those guys were still wrestlers who were in movies. This guy is now a bona fide movie star who just used to wrestle a little bit.
What do you think of Peter Berg's direction?
I thought it was good. I thought he's a pretty good action director. Like you said, this, Hancock, and even as bad as the movie was, Battleship still had good action scenes. Like, it was still shot well.
I mean, I agree with you. Like, we mentioned the whole thing about how it feels very sweaty. The action scenes, that you really feel the propulsivity of, like, whenever somebody gets punched. Like, especially, like, we've mentioned that club scene, but that club scene gets you immediately into every single hit really well, and gets you immersed in, like, the confusion of the club and how you're not really able to tell what's going on, but at the same time you can see everything that's going on. And I think that works in some of the other sequences as well. Maybe less so when we get to, like, the running of the bulls thing that just feels madly chaotic. But then even then, when we get to The Rock using the guns, which I think is a really solid Chekhov's gun of its own.
How insane was that? Like, he's just an absolute marksman with pump-action shotguns. Like, he could just cock him with one hand and with his amazing pectoral muscles or whatever he decides to use. That was so cool.
It would make less sense if you sort of had modern Rock. The more muscles he has, the less believable that would be. That, like, you can't even move your arm to cock that thing quite. You're too much muscle at this point.
Like, him as Hobbs, especially in Fast 5, you're like, this guy's just a walking, just ball of just sinew. Like,
well, I started noticing that around Pain and Gain. Pain and Gain was right where I noticed, like, he is...
Oh, yeah.
He's more muscle than man.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. He's just a big bicep with an eyebrow. Like, it's crazy. A beautiful olive-colored bicep.
A sentient bicep.
Yep.
That's the Rock body horror movie we need, is the sentient
bicep. That would be amazing.
David Cronenberg's The Sentient Bicep.
Starring Dwayne Johnson. And the whole time it's like, kill me!
So the rundown, right?
Yeah, the rundown. But this movie does everything right for what it's trying to be. We're trying to be an action movie. Yeah, the comedy, some of it does feel a little tacked on. But the action scenes are fantastic. Like, obviously, we mentioned the club scene, but even the scene where he's fighting Ernie Reyes and all of them, they're diving out of trees and kicking him from person to person. And it was really cool, really fun. The whip guy, that was really cool. It's just, man, Seann William Scott, he's hard to swallow for me. I don't know.
I think the best crystallization of Seann William Scott, who, like I said, sometimes I find him funny, sometimes I find him painfully annoying, is Goon, the first one.
Absolutely.
That is still like the perfect use of him, because he's a lovable, schlubby guy who just has like this impulse to like hurt people. I think that's kind of more where he fits perfectly. And here, he's sort of just like, it doesn't help that his character is like, you're the son of this rich guy, and you're being like a piece of shit, and it's kind of the character. It's kind of something that's like ingrained to work to what the Stifler kind of thing is. And really, I only thought Stifler really worked the first time. It just got really annoying after that point.
Well, it got too over the top. In the first movie, he was just a prick.
Yeah.
And in the second one, he's an idiot. Like, he wasn't stupid in the first one. He was just a quintessential prick jock character. Homophobic here, just asshole from high school. In the second one, and then he just became comedic relief, and it was just... And then, unfortunately, those movies were... Well, not unfortunately, I guess good for them, but they were hit movies. But because of that, he got typecast, and he was in everything as that character.
But I think that's what's really hurt his career as of yet, is really just the fact that like those movies were really successful when he was younger, but everyone just knows him as Stifler. He'll forever be Stifler. And like you said, typecasting, I think, has really kind of hurt his career up to this point. I think, to be fair, there are points where he's in terrible movies, and I think he's one of the few good things about them, like Cop Out, for example. I think he's an oasis.
Oh, he was the only good part of that movie.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, I can absolutely agree with that. That, in fact, if I would have got your option and do the bad choices, that was my choice.
This podcast would have been over after 2 episodes.
I can't blame you. I can't. No, but my favorite Seann William Scott roles of late, other than the Goon, was just in the one-off episode of It's Always Sunny as Country Mac.
Oh, that was pretty great too.
That was so funny. Country Mac was so awesome.
And that's another one where it works because he fits that kind of character, the It's Always Sunny character, where their heart is in the right place, but they're too much of an asshole to see that they're being this much of an asshole. But The Rock also, I think, really plays off of him well. I think he's doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and The Rock can do that. But I think in even like the scenes where they're kind of butting heads together, he does, I think, most of the more interesting stuff. Like, even especially in sort of like the almost all is lost moment where they're like, oh, we're gonna have to leave. It's like, but she's got my treasure and everything. What are you doing? Why would you leave at this point? And he convinces Rock to essentially go off and do that. And even like reacting off of like, say, the big gun thing later on, like I that is my favorite Seann William Scott bit, is him walking off just like, you really need to get help. That was pretty terrible. You just murdered all of those men.
Yeah, that
was really bad. It seems kind of like they wanted to make sort of a franchise off of this. Do you think this is a movie that could have sustained a franchise, or do you think the one and done fits fine for it?
I'm glad it's a one and done. Because unfortunately, if they would have done a sequel, it would have been more of, Beck and Travis. I wouldn't mind seeing if going on was more like Indiana Jones route, where it's just Dwayne Johnson's character getting into other, crazy hijinks and shenanigans. But it would have been more Seann William Scott than Dwayne Johnson, or they would have just been the same movie over and over and over again. So I'm glad it was just a one and done deal.
I concur with you about, I would love to see Dwayne Johnson's character sort of continue on his sort of weird stripe that's been going on. Maybe see a few earlier adventures since he wants to like kind of quit the business at this point.
Right.
I'd like to see him just being a sort of fixer that's going around, or getting the protection money, all this other shit. I would like to see him kind of do that, but be regretful about it. I think that would be interesting. But then again, just write another vehicle like that for The Rock. I think he can do that pretty well. Yeah.
I agree.
Only at this point, once again, it's just like somebody like sees this guy, and there wouldn't be the moment like at the beginning of the club thing where he like the football players doubting him, just like, whatever, man, get the hell out of here. The moment you see like The Rock now, you're like, here's my money.
Right, dude, whatever you want.
Me.
Good lord.
He would turn you into a Muppet. He would just stick his hand right up your ass and just make you a Muppet.
Absolutely. I hope so. Anyways.
Well, you would only do something like that with somebody personal, somebody who you really trusted, somebody like a friend, like the friends you see in Miami Connection.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have a special treat for you today. We have a new house band with a new dimension in rock and roll. We have the one, the only, Dragon Sound!
So, this was the movie that I picked, and I picked it because I mentioned this in the intro, but I wanted to do something that it's clearly trying to be an action movie, which those of you who don't know, for some reason maybe not have seen Miami Connection. Stop, watch Miami Connection, then come back. We'll talk.
I think more people have probably seen the riff tracks version of it than the actual movie.
Which, the riff tracks is fun, obviously, but...
Oh, it's hilarious.
There's so much genuine charm to Miami Connection, which, as I said, is trying to be an action movie, but ends up becoming a comedy in a wonderful way that so many movies try to create. Like, there are so many attempts at being a bad, cheeky movie, wink at the camera. But what works about a Miami Connection, or other movies of its ilk, like The Room, or where's some other ones, Adam? The good, bad movies. So bad, it's good.
Like Samurai Cop.
Samurai Cop, that's a great one, right.
Stone Cold, The Toxic Event, almost anything Troma did, like early Troma.
Right, but what works about those movies is that there's a very much a sincerity going on. They're clearly, especially like this has so many parallels to The Room for me in terms of this feels so much like an authentic immigrant story, like an immigrant's perspective on what the American dream is.
Absolutely.
Which, for those of you who don't know, the basic premise of Miami Connection is it follows a group of ostensibly college students, some of which look like they're in their mid to late 30s.
No, dude. No. Mark isn't like his 40s. Easily.
Are going to UCF, actual on-campus University of Central Florida, and are, just together. They're all orphans, or orphans, as Mark pronounces it, that are just trying to, study and have fun while practicing taekwondo and also being part of a band called Dragon Sound. And they run into this sort of evil samurai faction of Orlando I didn't know about. Who
are they samurais or ninjas? Because don't they do a song about ninjas?
Well, they do against the ninja. That's true. They all dress in ninja garb. There's a sect of ninjas who also are really tight with like the club owners, like especially the evil club owner. In that amazing scene where the two club owners argue with each other for no ostensive real reason. Just like, hey man, I want to talk to you. You're just playing music for fucking kids, man. That's what you do. And, Dragon Sound has to stop this evil faction of ninjas while also at the same time dealing with themes of paternity and community.
Yeah. And don't forget about Jeff. Jade's brother, Jeff. Fucking feather earring.
Okay.
He had a big mustache.
Well, he has the beard too, and he has my favorite line in the whole movie where she says to him, she's like, "Oh no, he's just a friend." A friend. Like the way he says "a friend" is. I know, and
he's so not intimidating in any way.
Oh my god!
He's just got that high pitched voice and like skinny little arms, and he's always showing them off.
He's so trying to be Chuck Norris. Like, you can tell he really wants to be Chuck Norris, and he can't be Chuck Norris.
No,
but
he doesn't know karate.
No. So, but Adam, we can't make this all laughing. So,
that's gonna be a rough one. Go ahead.
Where was the first time you discovered Miami Connection? When did you first watch Miami Connection?
Now, this is one of those things that I thought I had seen it before, and then my wife and I watched the riff tracks version of it quite a while ago, and the whole time, I was laughing my ass off, and I'm like, I think I might have seen this. So I really think this is one I caught in the early 90s somewhere. Like, I think I had to have rented it, because me and my brother growing up were into any martial arts movie we could get our hands on. So I want to say I saw it in the early 90s.
Well, I'm not sure if that's quite the case, because the story of Miami Connection is fascinating, in terms of it originally premiered in 1987 in Cannes. YK Kim, the director, co-writer, star, who plays Mark, brought the film to Cannes and rented out a theater at Cannes to screen to distributors. And they all said, this is trash, throw it away, no one's going to watch this. Then he premiered it in Orlando in a brief run where everybody hated it, including a famous Orlando Sentinel review that completely said, like, worst film of 1988 and all this other stuff. And so it was abandoned. He didn't do anything with it until a guy who went with the Alamo Drafthouse, Zach Carlson, literally bought a print off of eBay for $35 and started screening it at the Alamo Drafthouse in Austin, Texas. And it became such a huge hit that it got redistributed through the Drafthouse in 2012 or so. So it was, but I don't blame you at the same time for thinking this was like an early 90s cable sort of bad kung fu action movie release, because it feels like that, but in a way that's so much more unique because of, like I said, this earnestness of YK Kim to make a story about family and community, which is really interesting considering there's a great Vice mini documentary that they made about Miami Connection that you can find on YouTube. It's called Taekwondo Rockers versus Cocaine-Dealing Ninjas, The True Story of Miami Connection, where apparently YK Kim, for the last few decades, has been, after he came to America and started out penniless, started building up an industry as a Taekwondo teacher. And now he is, like, huge, but when Miami Connection came out, it bankrupted him. It was like a big thing that, like, he sucked all his money into it, and his family was literally bankrupted. And
I can see that.
Yes, but then he rose back up in his empire and now embraces Miami Connection.
Wait a second. Stop.
I'm not.
Kim doesn't have a fucking empire.
He has a very successful business of Taekwondo places in, especially the Florida area. He holds huge seminars that get thousands of people. I'm not kidding.
Okay, I believe you. I'm just.
But no, he has. All right, okay. He has a very strong business ethic, and it still is flourishing to this day.
Oh, it's like an empire.
It's a very small empire. It's a micronation of sorts.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Obviously, but no, he has a very successful, thriving business, and he makes a difference in his community, especially in early. I recommend that thing so much. That little documentary that shows so much about him as that really feeds into that sincerity that's here in Miami Connection, which is very cheesy, very inept, but in a way that you can't help but smile throughout.
Oh, yeah, definitely. All right, let's just call it what it is. This is a terrible film.
Yes.
I mean, it is absolutely atrocious. But it is not unwatchable atrocious. It
Far
is
from it.
Just, it's so fun. And just pure in that cultish midnight movie way. Just fun and hilarious. Unintentionally hilarious. Which is insane to me. But this really goes to show, like you said earlier, like Tommy Wiseau, with these foreign movie lovers and everything, they want to make a movie from the American perspective, and they've never really been in America. So they're basing what they think America is on other things that they're getting, like other movies or magazines or entertainment. And it's just so odd. Like, it's just, everything's just turned a little bit, especially the idea of male friends. Yes. Friendship in general. Obviously in the room where they're just in their tuxedos throwing a football back and forth for no reason. Well, in this one, they're always like shirtless and pantsless outside running to get the mail.
Or some of them have pants, but they're clearly just completely zipped down and unbuttoned, which is
it's my favorite thing ever in this movie. That guy is my favorite thing in this movie. When he's crying about his dad, oh my god, I lost it. I swear to god, I thought I was going to pass out. I was laughing so hard. It's the worst crying performance I've ever seen. It's so loud and nasally.
It's Maurice Smith as Jim, the Korean and Black American keyboardist.
With this gray, slacks on, but it just his tiny waist completely showing because he's got them completely unzipped.
Yes, this whole sequence that Adam's referring to, in which he gets a letter about his father, who, once again, they're all orphans. So they have no idea of their biological parents. and he just finds out about it, just like, but father was in the services, and I sent some letters. It's so great, especially, like, what makes it is the fact that all of the guys around him completely are just like, oh man, he's having a breakdown. This is so sad, our friend.
I know. It's like trying to console it so bad. And then YK Kim, when he's, just schooling the dude around with his toes, where he's grabbing him by the nose with his toes, while they're just practicing their, taekwondo in the, in the quad at college. He just pulled her. I mean, what is going on? And dude, why does YK Kim have to, mimic playing guitar? Why does he got to be the guitarist?
Oh god, but
bad.
It's pretty bad. Like, because some of them, I know the main guy,
Angelo Gennati,
the John Oates guy. Yeah, I know he wrote all the songs and he's the actual singer. Which I honestly will say, as cheesy as all of these songs are, you kind of get into it.
They're so catchy.
There's Friends for Eternity. There's Against the Ninja, which is exceptionally catchy, and has the great chorus of tae-kwon, tae-kwon, taekwondo, which insanely catchy. I'm sad that it's not on iTunes. I want to buy these songs, honestly.
That's what I'm saying, dude. I tried to get it on Spotify. I tried to get it on iTunes. I tried to get it anywhere. I can't get it anywhere.
It's only you can find on YouTube. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It's literally, which is a shame. Draft House, put those out. Put a digital album out. I will buy it instantly of these songs. And
absolutely.
Oh my god, it's so fun. But yeah, it's the whole concept of all these friends who are totally together, and I love the fact that it's so much of a bloody, gory, crazy action movie, and the end title card is only through stopping violence can we achieve world peace. What the fuck are you talking about?
I know. After Mark just killed 20 or to 30 ninjas, violently killed them, and then
in a bit that I'm surprised wasn't intentionally comedic, because it feels like perfectly orchestrated action comedy, where YK Kim goes over to Maurice Smith, who's dying, I'm dying, and then meanwhile in the background the other guy is trying to come over, and then a ninja comes in and he attacks him while this dramatic scene's going on in the foreground.
I know.
It's so perfect. It's
ridiculous. Now, I don't think anybody in this but YK Kim actually knew Taekwondo.
What? No.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they did, and that alone goes to show what kind of movie you're in for. It is a Taekwondo martial arts movie with one person that knows how to do martial arts. Yeah. Oh, and as I said, he's also the rhythm guitarist of Dragon Sound.
Oh, that name is so great. It's so much this, when you watch it, kind of feel for a second, is this a parody of 80s movies? And then it's just no, it's just, it's like I said, it's through that weird perspective of somebody who's clearly knows only about America through, action cinema videos, of this era. Yeah, exactly. It feels so much like it's that distilled perspective that makes it an instant classic in terms of just unintentional comedy.
And I love that every member of the band, it's obvious what nationality they are, and everything else, what their genealogy is. The Italian, there's the Italian guy, the Korean and African American guy, and then the Korean. It's crazy. Nowhere does a ragtag group like that exist except for the fucking Olympics. It was. I don't know, but it's so funny.
It was ahead of the curve. It was very diverse.
No, absolutely. I mean, I agree with you. I'm not saying it's a terrible thing. Keep them separate. It's so funny to me. I don't know why. I just find it so. He had everything represented in this one really phony band.
It's definitely the so idealized in a way that is kind of infectiously charming. Especially when, like we said, that contrast of oh hey, we're all friends. We all we just want to play our music and then go eat at the what was it, Uncle Sonny's fucking restaurant and just be friends.
I love that guy too.
Who was the other director, by the way? YK Kim's co-director, Woo Sang Park, who would later direct a lot of schlocky sort of B action sort of ninja movies that came out. Because the ninja movie was a pretty under a B movie, but still a fervent craze amongst especially like schlocky sort of second-rate studios like Canon, and you can tell that once again this is him trying to kind of cash in on that. But the action of this movie is also amazingly inept. Like, you can tell there's taekwondo in terms of, like, alright, there's basic, like, self-defense stuff that's going on. Like, honestly, the one scene where some of the action kind of works, but it's still ridiculous, is the whole scene where they're just driving down, like, what seems like it's probably, like, 4 in the morning when they didn't have to get any permits, and they could just shoot something really quick.
Oh, my God, that was...
And then everybody crowds around them. And, like, you can see YK Kim actually doing some kind of kick-ass taekwondo moments, but once again... So many of these shots are clearly, like, really quick steps. Like, okay, run around this corner, you run around this corner. YK Kim will kick your face, and then we'll keep going, because the cops are going to come.
And yet, nobody has any real weapons. They just got, like, chains and, like, sticks and stuff. Like, what kind of shitty gang is this? And there was a lot of them.
Yes.
But they just had, like, sticks and chains and, like, a bottle, you know, here or there that they would break.
Interestingly enough, most of those extras, like, I would... From what I've heard, it's a solid, like, 90% of the cast, isn't like our main core members, are students of YK Kim. Also, a lot of the crew was that, which you can clearly tell.
And the bikers were all real bikers.
Who were paid in beer, which is great,
awesome.
And you can tell.
I would take that. Yeah, I would take that.
And there's just this interesting vibe, especially of, like, Orlando in the late 80s. It just oozes a lot of that kind of, like, sunny sleaze that's going on the whole time. But it's once again, it's the contrast of that with the idealized, like, we're gonna be friends and we go to college and we're fourth place in our computer competition thing.
Yeah, right. Let's go get pizza now. The reason it's so charming and so endearing is because he took it very seriously, you can tell.
Right, which is why when you get something like, say, a Sharknado, where they're clearly trying to be bad.
Oh, when they're in on the joke, it ruins it. Yeah,
yes,
100%.
Completely. It's all the difference in the world between Birdemic and Birdemic 2, which
exactly.
An example you use, Samurai Cop versus Samurai Cop 2.
Oh man, not to get into it, but I watched Samurai Cop 2 and 3. I watched them.
There's a 3? I didn't even know there was a 3. Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, it's on Prime. It's the worst movie I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I kid you not. I've seen a lot of it.
But I'm guessing it's because he was in on the fact that people were making fun of him, as opposed to...
Yeah, right, exactly. It's funny you brought up Birdemic, and not to go on a tangent, but I remember when Birdemic came out, and the director of that pulled the same thing that Tommy Wiseau pulled. They're like, oh, I meant it to be funny. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Not the first one, you didn't. Stop it. You're not some genius auteur who was on the pulse of something. You just made a shitty, cheap movie.
Works about like a YK Kim, which I think is so interesting, is he's a guy who, when you watch that Vice documentary, it's clearly just like, look, I just had a brief dream of wanting to, like, make it out in Hollywood. It didn't work. But now he appreciates it. Like, people like it, but he's not trying to cash in on it and do Miami Connection 2, which would be the biggest mistake ever.
Yeah, good for him, man.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, good for him, because it'd be easy for him to find the funding from somebody to go ahead and make it. Or even just fund it himself and, you know, keep all the take from it. But, that's really cool. That he's like, it is what it is.
Right, exactly. And it's something in the past, but he still appreciates the warmth that it brings to people, even if it's just through laughing at how inept it is. He understands and rides with the joke, as opposed to cashing in on the joke in a wonderful way.
Right.
But what are some other scenes we haven't mentioned?
Oh, God, dude. Well, like I said, there's the letter reading.
Well, there's the letter reading, but there's the reaction to that, when he actually gets the letter that confirms about the father. That's my favorite scene with Maurice Smith. Where he opens
now, is it the one where he's crying, or the one where he's
No, not the one where he's crying. The one where he is super excited. It's just like, my father! My father! Oh, my God!
Oh, my father!
Oh, my God! And then they all raise him up.
Dude, I know. It's so funny that you even said those words. They raise him up, because when we were watching it, I started singing Josh Groban.
You kind of almost, when you hear, like, you raise me up...
You really do, dude. He's like, oh! And then YK, with his horrible accent, like, he's got the worst broken English, dude. But it's like, oh, yeah, your father, he found you! And you're like, oh, yeah. Dude, they are really pumped for him. Grown-ass shirtless men out of the yard at 8 a.m. after the mail came. Throwing each other around the yard and shit, because one of them found their fucking dad who was in NASA or some shit.
Using the services, and by the way, an underrated terrible thing about the movie is when they cut to the final scene of them in the hospital waiting room, and the dad is clearly the same age as them, but they put shitty gray stuff in their hair.
Terrible.
I'm so glad you found my son I had at 3 years old.
I love the beach montage, too.
Oh, God, which feels so much like, once again, that's another example. Like, he probably saw a Porky-style movie. That's
and
just
it
like,
lasts for way too long.
Oh, so long. And especially that whole thing where it's like, give me a kiss. Come on, just a kiss. And then the girls just, like, beat him up.
I know, they kicked the living shit out of him. Everybody's laughing and stuff. Like, this is awful. What is going on? Like, he's, like, really being sexually aggressive.
Yes.
And they just decide, like, nah, we're going to beat the shit out of this guy in the middle of the daytime in front of everybody, and nobody's going to stop it on either end. So it's just a bunch of shitty people on that beach.
I don't know. With those girls, like, he's being sexually aggressive. You kick his ass trying to be creepy.
He was being really sexually aggressive.
Yeah, fuck that guy. Fuck Oates. I liked Hall anyway better. Get out of here.
Oh, man. Freaking mustache.
It's an amazing mustache. Look, I'm not decrying the facial hair. A scene I love is, like, we haven't really talked about some of, like, the scenes that are clearly trying to be, like, almost like a Miami Vice scene. Like, especially where we see, like, the sort of henchmen toadies at the beginning meet the ninjas, and the action that goes on there with, like, the use of gore in this movie is fascinating. Where sometimes it's just like, oh, it's just a small streak, and then in another scene, a guy's head explodes because it gets hit. Like, it's insane.
Like, when Maurice gets his chest cut.
Oh my god, yeah, it's like your internal organs should be out of
I'm like, he is so dead. Like, he just got cut in half, and he lives, man. He's fine. They just patch him up.
Well, especially when they goes over to the hospital, and they're on the way, like, we're going to the hospital. We'll be there soon. And the guy just looks like he's nodding off, sleeping.
I'm like, why would it? His heart's, you can see his heart. Like, he's dead, man. And then I got really confused, because it's like, there's all the ninjas in the beginning, and then there's no ninjas for, like, almost an hour, because it's all, like, Jack and the bikers and all that, and then ninjas again. What is going on here?
All right, and also, okay, one of my favorite things, especially upon this watch, that I just love, is you have Jack's sister, who's the only female, really, that's in the main cast, and just clearly used as a prop. And she's such a prop, though, that later on, there's the point where after they kill the brother in a giant action scene, and of course it's the villain death of him falling over a pier, like, whoa! He's like, on the ground, dead. And then it cuts over to, like, John and Jane, right before they go off to, like, meet Jim's father. And he's just like, hey, I'm sorry about what happened with your brother. Oh, no, it's fine, I understand. That happened, like, 48 hours ago! Your brother died, and also was part of, like, and was also, you found out, a part of, like, a big cocaine smuggling ring in Orlando. That's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. And she's like, oh, no, it's fine, I understand why.
Right, she's like, no, it's cool.
I get it.
Oh, don't worry about it. Oh, it's cool, boy.
Boys will be boys, am I right?
Love you. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, I think I'd be a little more upset whether or not my brother was a dick or not. Like, some dude threw him off, like, some construction equipment or a pier, and he got impaled. I'd be a little more upset about it. Did I notice, am I crazy, or is there scenes where he had a full beard and then he'd have a mustache and then a full beard again?
I wouldn't doubt it. I'm not sure.
I'm almost positive. If you notice, I was very obsessed with his facial hair and the facial hair in general in this movie, because it is all immaculate.
Yes, that's true. It's the most consistent thing about the movie.
Yeah. Or maybe not, after what I just said. I don't know. That might be the brilliance.
And there's so much of, like, the patchwork you can tell, because a big thing was, after they did the main shooting and after the Cannes screening, YK Kim reshot a lot of stuff, like the ending, where originally Jim was supposed to die, and all the distributors were like, no, you shouldn't do that, you should just live. Like, that's a downer to end the movie on. And he also reshot, apparently, a lot of those action sequences that happen. Like, you can tell, like, when the main white ninja, you see him most of the time, it's clearly, like, an actual stunt performer. And then they cut to the big showdown between him and YK Kim, and it's clearly a completely different guy, who I think is white.
Oh, yeah.
Like, based on the hands,
guy.
he's clearly
he's
white.
A white dude. Yeah.
After seeing this other Asian dude the whole time.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, no, it's clearly just some white guy now. So yeah, he does. Yeah, that explains a lot, though, that he had to go do reshoots, and then so whose idea was it to put that text at the end of the movie? That's what I want to know.
Maybe it's YK Kim's. I don't know. It's so weird to me. Just
I don't understand.
Especially that whole sequence, we have to emphasize it in like the forest area, is so unbelievably, horrifically gory at points. It is just
dude, they're just hacking at people to shit, man.
Especially, there's so many shots of like John like stabbing somebody with the sword with blood on his face, like, Aah! And then YK Kim also has like that weird like underbite coming out, looking like the whole time. And then only through nonviolence can we achieve world peace. It's the perfect comedy note to hit on. He's just striking comedy gold at every second and not intending it at all.
Is. That's like I said. That's what makes it so good.
Yes,
because he's not trying to be funny, and those are always the funniest people in the funniest movies when they're not pandering and they're not pushing it too hard to be funny. I mean, because this movie is just pure comedy gold. It really is.
And would you classify it then as an action comedy?
I classify it as an unintentional action comedy.
Well, it's weird. It's intentional action, unintentional comedy.
Exactly.
Perfect way. Perfect. How many other movies would be in that subgenre, though? Is that Samurai Cop's there?
Stone Cold with Brian Bosworth.
Right.
That movie's hilarious. A lot of the old Steven Seagal and Van Damme movies. Like, dude, you can't watch Kickboxer or Bloodsport and not laugh.
Oh, my God.
They're so funny. The Van Damme dancing. Oh, my God. And is it because they're dated? Sure, man. We're laughing at a lot of it now because it's the 80s cheese factor that was everywhere. It's so magical.
Well, but my thing is, I would say it's less a case of like, oh, this is dated it's more a thing of, it's a time capsule. It is a movie firmly made in the mid to late 80s. And it's...
Oh, yeah.
And that's what it ended up being, given that, how the Draft House guys discovered it was literally just like undiscovered treasure that was just found on an eBay for $35. Like, you discovered gold for
pure gold,
pure uncut cocaine gold. And it's magical to see. And it feels like it's a movie that was unearthed. In terms of, like, it's something that you would, like, find in the woods. You're like, what is this tape? And then you watch it and you're like, oh my God, how has no one ever seen this before? This is so amazing. But yeah, are there any final thoughts about Miami Connection, Adam?
I mean, honestly, the only thing I can say is if our millions and millions of listeners, if there's one of them that hasn't seen this, then they're missing out. You got to see this movie.
Yes.
I mean, this movie is just pure gold. There's nothing else like it. This is definitely one of those one-of-a-kind movies. And even if you only do catch the Riff Tracks one, it's still worth it. Because the Riff Tracks guys, they're hilarious. And the movie's still, you can still watch the whole movie. It's funny, too. I mean, I recommend seeing the non-Riff Tracks version first. But if that's the only one you can catch, then watch it.
Yes, and I'll just state that only through non-violence can we achieve world peace. And on that note, that's the end of our discussion on Miami Connection. As we're wrapping up here, we do want to mention we've released our first episode and got some feedback from people. One from Jeff L., who says, very stoked to hear about your new show. Best wishes, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff.
Also from Scott Crawford, who said, just finished listening to the episode 1 and loved it. Thank you, Scott. And then,
Scott, he's all right, man. I met him. He's all right. I would, he's okay.
And we also want to thank Lance Langford, who said, yes, Ghost Rider's the good one, right? I mean, clearly.
Obviously, man. Come on, Double L. That's some better questions.
Yes. We also want to thank Chris Oliver for the music used on our show. Listen to more of his music at chrisoliver.bandcamp.com. He's got some good tunes the kids all like. It's not Dragon Sound.
Right, no. And there's hundreds of them.
Yes.
So, you got plenty to listen to.
Yes, and we want to also encourage you to find us on Twitter at DEDBpod, or also at doubleedgedoublebill@gmail.com, or you can also follow us at our own individual accounts on Twitter, which is at NotTheWho'sTommy for me, and Adam.
God damn it. At ValakithFan6969.
Goddamn right.
Yeah, I'm keeping it. That's it forever.
Now you got to own it.
I mean, I might as well at this point.
Yes. And that is the end of our second episode. Now, Adam, we gotta get out there because we have to practice for our big show tonight. We're Dragon Sound. We're friends for eternity. Let's go!
Friends for eternity, friends for life, friends forever, thick and thin.
That's the kind of music you're missing if you're not at the clubs in Orlando, guys. Good night!
Good night.